A lot of people finished the finale thinking Carol went nowhere, that she had no growth, that she went back to where she started, same goal, same enemy. But that reaction only happens if you're looking at her arc the wrong way. Because once you start peeling back the layers of what this story is actually tracking, that ending does not feel confusing anymore. It feels deliberate. And when you see it, it finally clicks. I'm Bobby Foster. This is The Real Spot. Let's dive in. Most criticism of Carol's arc is built on this assumption, that this was a story about her changing her stance on the hive, that she'd go from being anti-hive to understanding to acceptance to resolution. So when the finale ends with Carol going from accepting them again to opposing them again, it feels like the show just went in a circle. Like all that emotional buildup didn't move her forward at all, just didn't change anything. But that assumption misses the point because Carol's arc was never about how she was viewing the hive. It was about isolation versus connection. We've seen all throughout the season how Carol's been challenged again and again through her isolation versus her want to connect to something. And most importantly, what happens when someone finally opens themselves up and that openness gets used against them. At the start of the story, Carol is already isolated, even before the others come into the picture as the central threat. She kept herself compartmentalized. She didn't want to openly acknowledge Helen as her spouse. She even kept her sexuality coded and contained. Even in her writing, she didn't want to fully allow herself to be seen by having Raban be a man instead of a woman. Because Carol just wasn't ready to be open about it all the way. Because she had been through some very traumatizing things in her past. And this isn't subtle. Like what she was going through was a survival mechanism because her parents, as she said, put her in a conversion therapy camp, right? So Carol learned early on that her being honest about who she is comes with consequences that none of us would want to face. Really being tortured and punished for who you are by the ones that say they love you the most. So she learned to stay guarded, learn to stay controlled, learn to be separate. And that's the Carol that we're introduced to at the beginning of the story. And here's where the show strays from typical storytelling, because we're used to stories where vulnerability is the reward at the end, that being open just leads to good things and this and that. But in Pluribus, vulnerability ended up being the danger. This was not a happy ending. Carol ends up calling Helen her spouse out loud. She changed Raban to a woman in the next Waikaro book, and she let herself be emotionally intimate with Zosha, even though she knew the risks. And not just the risks, a part of her knew that it wasn't real, right? She knew that. But because she was alone for such a prolonged period of time, because yes, the others were manipulating her and gaslighting her and using her, she broke. She knew that she wanted and needed, more importantly, that connection after all that time being alone. We've seen time and time again the others using the immune people's weakness against them. But all of those moments where Carol finally opened up, like those are massive acts of self-acceptance. They're not small moments. And even in a post-apocalyptic world with these others that are so accepting and there really doesn't seem to be any consequence about her opening up, it still takes courage for Carol to break through all of that trauma. Like that stuff lives with you forever. But these are also the moments where Carol becomes the most exposed. And it's all of our fear to be vulnerable and then have it be used against us. That's like the worst possible outcome. And this is where the show takes a turn, because the others didn't just betray Carol. They violated her. They stole her eggs without her consent. They attempt to convert her without her permission. And this is an important detail, right? Because they try to justify it by saying they love her.
If you loved me, you wouldn't do this.
Please understand, we have to do this because we love you.
They see turning her into one of them as being the best thing for her, even though Carol doesn't think it'll be the best for herself. They are completely imposing their will on her. And that moment isn't just manipulation, it's a mirror, because it's that conversion therapy logic. This control disguised as care. Erasure formed as compassion, which we also saw in the beginning of the episode with Kusamayu, where they imitated her culture to manipulate her into feeling comfortable while they converted her, and then they erased her culture immediately after that. They dropped it like it was absolutely nothing, completely meaningless. And then that shot with the goat following after her, we see Kusamayu loving this goat, and then when she turns into an other, just completely leaves the thing she loved behind. The others do not actually know what love is, in my opinion, at all. And so this show is drawing a direct parallel to Carol's past trauma. And so this isn't her going backward. This is her being re-traumatized in a new way. And that distinction really matters because it leads to another criticism that I see constantly. And that's that Carol was selfish when she chose Zosha over saving the world. I don't agree with that at all. People also say that she treated Manusos unfairly. But that reading of the story ignores the context that Carol was operating under. First, when it comes to Manusos, he came in there guns blazing, saying that if it came down to it, they would have to kill the others. And that was never Carol's mission, to hurt the others. When she made them seize a couple times, she did it accidentally and felt completely guilty about it, right? But then Manuso snapped at her literally. He caused the others to seize twice on purpose. So it wasn't like Manusos was coming in as this nice guy right off the bat. Actually, he was doing a lot of the things people were critiquing Carol over, saying why Carol was such a bad character and they hated her. Manusos was doing the same stuff, if not worse. So I'm sure if you're Carol in that situation, you wouldn't really have been nice to Manusos either. But when it comes to her choosing Zosha over saving the world, let's not forget that in this circumstance, Carol is a victim to the others. The others came to the planet. They killed 1 billion people. They killed her wife. They gaslit Carol. They manipulated Carol. And in this moment, the only reason why Zosha or the others are entertaining Carol in this way, in this cabin, and having her fall in love with Zosha, is to manipulate her and to distract her from her mission. And they succeeded. Let's not forget, too, that Carol believed that in order for her to be converted, it required consent, right? So she believed that she wasn't on a clock anymore. So her urgency wasn't really there when she left to go with Zosha instead of staying with Manusos. She thought she had time. And then when she found out the truth that they were going to get the stem cells from her eggs and that they were taking and that her consent never mattered, time was never on her side. So the moment that happened, her belief shattered and Carol snapped back into motion in her mission of trying to save the world. But it wasn't because she remembered her mission. It was because she realized how deeply she got played. However, when she decides to save the world again, she approaches it in a much different way. If you've been following my Pluribus breakdowns at all, you know I've been saying this for a while, that the others don't love, they perform. And the finale finally confirms it. Like I said, we see it with Kusamayu. The Hive respected her customs until the conversion was complete, and then they leave. The culture was erased. That connection was severed. The performance was over. We saw the same thing with Diabate when he was playing cards. And so with every immune that they encounter, they mirror what that person needs most. They lower their defensives. They wait, and they're just trying to convert them. That doesn't mean that they're just some evil villain doing evil things for evil's purpose. But it does mean that their biological imperative overrides empathy, and good intentions don't cancel harm. And let's not sugarcoat the truth here. They have done a lot of harm. Like I said, they killed 1 billion people. They're manipulating Carol, and no, manipulation does not have to happen on purpose. You can do things with great intentions and still manipulate people. You could do things with great intentions and still hurt people. So I do think in a way the others are altruistic, and they do believe they're actually helping people, and they don't want to hurt people, but they are. But here's the realization that gives you a different perspective on the show, which is that Carol didn't return to who she was at the beginning. She returned to what she wanted in her mission, but she returned as a fundamentally different person. She went through being manipulated, gaslit. She went through opening up to the point where it ended up being used against her again. She was a reluctant hero that wasn't really ready to save the world, and now she is, at any cost necessary. Her goal didn't change, but her understanding of the world and the others did. That's not a failed arc, that's a painful one. So if Carol's arc left you feeling unsettled, that's because it wasn't designed to feel victorious. It was designed to feel clarifying. The story isn't asking whether Carol can save humanity, it's asking what saving humanity will cost her. And so far, it's cost her basically everything. So what else is she willing to lose to save everybody? I'm Bobby Foster, and this is The Real Spot, where we put words to the feelings that stories leave behind. If this helps something click for you, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Hit that like and subscribe so more videos like this will show up on your feed. Until next time, I'll see y'all.